Welcome to Aaron Mahnke's Cabinet of Curiosities, a production of iHeartRadio and Grim and Mild.
Our world is full of the unexplainable. And if history is an open book, all of these amazing tales are right there on display, just waiting for us to explore. Welcome to the Cabinet of Curiosities. Most restaurants pride themselves on the freshness of the food they serve. They'll stand at your table and discuss how the chickens led happy, satisfied lives before they ended up on your plate, or how the greens were harvested from local farms only a mile away. Nothing tastes quite as crisp as a lettuce leaf straight from the dirt. But in 1911, one place didn't care about farm to table. In fact, it refused to serve anything freshly made for a very good reason. It all happened in Chicago at the Hotel Sherman. 400 guests had gathered in the hotel's Louis XIV room for a special 5-course meal lasting 2 hours. Among the elite clientele was the city's mayor, the health commissioner, and a number of politicians from Washington, D.C. and New York, all who had arrived with hefty appetites. On their plates were things like April egg salad and roast February capon. The menu didn't hide anything either. It explained where every ingredient had come from in detail, including how long ago it had been prepared. For example, the chicken had been kept in Chicago cold storage for almost a year. Mayor Eichen Green, the VP of the National Poultry, Butter, and Egg Association, told everyone that your capon received its summons to the great unknown along about last St. Valentine's Day. Now, it was late October. None of the ingredients had come from local farms or suppliers, and everything being served was months old. So, why were these high-ranking officials willing to test their taste buds and their stomachs with old food? Because the times had changed, and the new age was upon them. This luncheon was called the Cold Storage Banquet, and it was designed to showcase the benefits of a brand new technology, refrigeration. You see, in the days before this banquet was held, food was stored in a number of different ways. It was often smoked, salted, pickled, or kept in root cellars underground. People of means might have stored their ingredients in ice houses during the spring and summer months, while others had individual ice boxes in their homes and apartments. In fact, ice became a major part of daily life. What used to be cut from frozen lakes and shipped to the cities was soon made in factories and delivered right to homes and businesses. Many houses had ice boxes to store their milk and other perishable items. It was a rough time in America, where people often died from food-based illnesses. But by 1911, refrigeration was being introduced to the masses, and it promised to end food poisoning and other foodborne problems. Now, ingredients and leftovers could be stored for longer at lower temperatures without worrying about bacteria or needing to replace a large block of ice every few days. But of course, not everyone was quick to embrace this newfangled technology. In fact, the U.S. government had considered passing laws that would impose strict time limits on how long things like meat and dairy could be held in cold storage. So, to assuage the fears and demonstrate the value of refrigeration, the industry sponsored a special luncheon comprised only of foods that had been in long-term cold storage. And the plan worked. The head chef of the hotel there said that it was the best luncheon he had ever served. And one congressman argued that the chicken was even more flavorful than a bird, and I quote, advertised as freshly killed. Overall, people were quite pleased with the meal they had eaten. And soon enough, the idea of cold storage was everywhere. Although not everyone was thrilled. Critics believed refrigeration would alter the taste of food, and not for the better. In some ways, that is true, but the benefits of keeping things fresher for longer far outweigh the changes in flavor. General Electric started producing home refrigerators that very same year. Although they were prohibitively expensive, a new fridge cost about $1,000, twice the amount of a new car. But eventually those costs came down, and refrigerators found their way into every home in America. And of course, you know how this story ends. Today we store almost all of our fresh food in the chilling embrace of our refrigerators, preserving it for weeks at a time. And to think, we might not have had them today if not for 400 brave politicians willing to risk their lives for a slice of 1-year-old apple pie. What's your favorite dinosaur? That's a question that you might not have heard since elementary school, but I like to think that whether you're 9 or 99, your answer still says something about you. As for me, my favorite dinosaur is the Triceratops, because good things come in threes, right? Now, you might be a Velociraptor enthusiast, or a T-Rex fan, or a lover of pterodactyls. You might even prefer the more peaceful Brontosaurus. You know, those long-necked, tiny-head tree lovers? That's the one. Except for one little detail. Your favorite dinosaur, the Brontosaurus, may have never actually existed. The whole mix-up dates back over 140 years, when two American paleontologists were duking it out in a conflict known as the Bone Wars. You see, in the late 1800s, you couldn't talk about paleontology without talking about O.C. Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope. These two men were pioneers in the field. They began their career as friends and colleagues, but that didn't last for long. In 1868, Cope showed Marsh a quarry that he was digging in, and shortly after, Marsh struck a deal with the quarry's owner, giving him exclusive rights to fossils found in it. Essentially, he planned to steal Cope's specimens right out from under him. After that, it was all war. A few years later, in 1877, a wealth of dinosaur fossils were discovered at a dig site near Morrison, Colorado. Marsh and Cope, each desperate to one-up each other, used every dirty trick they knew to protect their finds and to sabotage their rivals. There are stories of the two bribing each other's workers, spying on their dig sites, and even straight-up stealing fossils from each other. There are even reports of the two paleontologists ordering their workers to smash fossils left behind so the other men couldn't collect them. The entire time, too, both Marsh and Cope were in a competition to make more discoveries, publish more papers, and have more articles in the news. But in the rush to make new discoveries, sometimes things got a bit confusing. Like how in 1877, Marsh's team uncovered a brand new skeleton in Morrison, Colorado. Of course, Marsh was ecstatic to find that hiding under tons of rocks and debris was a nearly perfect specimen of an unknown dinosaur. The creature had 4 limbs, a whip-like tail, and an incredibly long neck. The only thing missing was the new dinosaur's head. When a museum asked for a reconstruction of the skeleton to show in its collection a few years later, Marsh put a skull he found near the skeleton on top to complete it. He named the animal the Apatosaurus, which comes from the Greek deceptive lizard. By 1885, Marsh had made dozens of discoveries since the Apatosaurus. Still trying to outpublish Cope, he was excited when his team shipped him the bones of a new dinosaur. This was another species of a long-necked leaf-eating dinosaur, this time complete with a skull. Not wanting to waste any time, Marsh gave it a cursory examination, then declared it a brand new species, the Brontosaurus, meaning thunder lizard. The only problem, the Brontosaurus and the Apatosaurus were one and the same. The Brontosaurus skeleton was just more complete than the Apatosaurus fossil, including the correct skull. Marsh was so desperate to defeat Cope that he didn't even realize the dinosaur he had just named had already been discovered by him. For nearly 100 years, Cope's 2 long-necked dinosaurs became fixtures in the public's imagination. The Brontosaurus especially became a star of movies, books, and classrooms around the world. It wasn't until 1979 that the confusion was finally cleared up. That year, 2 paleontologists who had heard rumors about the 2 long necks' similarities dug into the data. The more they researched, the more they realized the 2 dinos were actually one. Finally, nearly 100 years after it was first assembled, the 2 paleontologists put the right skulls on Marsh's original Apatosaurus. Then they made an announcement to the world. There was no such thing as a Brontosaurus. The long-necked dinosaur that Marsh found was the one and only Apatosaurus. They'd finally uncovered the truth. Well, that's what they thought they'd done. But 36 years later, in 2015, science threw a wrench into their conclusions. That year, a study was conducted that compared every long-necked dinosaur fossil that had ever been discovered. And the results were surprising. It turned out that Marsh was right all along. The Brontosaurus and the Apatosaurus were 2 different, distinct dinosaur fossils. No bones about it. I hope you've enjoyed today's guided tour of the Cabinet of Curiosities. Subscribe for free on Apple Podcasts or learn more about the show by visiting curiositiespodcast.com. This show was created by me, Aaron Mahnke, in partnership with How Stuff Works. I make another award-winning show called Lore, which is a podcast, book series, and television show. And you can learn all about it over at theworldoflore.com. And until next time, stay curious.